Hey JT, what do we have in the inbox today?
Hey Kim, so let's take a look. It looks like we have another one that just came in on HILIC again.
Ooh, HILIC.
Yeah, as you know, HILIC is perceived as kind of challenging, but necessary sometimes.
Absolutely. I mean, sometimes you're trying to get retention of a polar compound, and it won't work by reverse phase. So you have to go to HILIC chromatography, and it'll retain, and it'll be beautiful. But there are other considerations that you have to think about because HILIC's not exactly like reverse phase chromatography.
Exactly, and here the trouble is with equilibration.
Ah,
They want to know if you have to equilibrate a HILIC column a lot longer than reverse phase.
I see. Hey, they actually put an attachment on here for some data. Let's take a
Yeah,
look.
let's take a look at that.
So it's really great that he sent us this data, and he basically sent us 3 different examples of his equilibration times. So you can see that at 2 minutes, and at 5 minutes, and at 10 minutes, he really is getting changes in selectivity between peaks 1 and 2. So he asks a good question, and I think maybe we should take a look at it to determine, what the real factors are, and how long do you really need to equilibrate, and what the differences are between this and reverse phase. So JT, that was some really good data that the customer showed us, and it clearly shows some differences. So I think he's on the right track thinking that, there is a problem there. But how do you think we should test for this?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking obviously we need to look at a HILIC column, like a common stationary phase.
Yep.
And I think we should set up some experiments just so we can understand how many column volumes it takes to get that column to a steady state
Yeah.
or fully equilibrated.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can compare that to a reverse phase column
Yes, definitely.
and then potentially provide some tips and tricks
Mm-hmm.
to maybe help speed up that equilibration process.
Yep. I think we need to clearly define what this looks like, though.
Yeah, I agree. So let me walk you through what I'm thinking for an experiment.
Sounds good.
So Kim, I think a great way to set up this myth is just to look at, again, a real common HILIC stationary phase. We'll use something like an amide. I think that's a good phase to start off with.
All right.
What I'll do is I'll equilibrate the column, for a long period of time. I'll use about 300 column volumes, and that'll get it into a nice steady state. I'll then perform some replicate injections of some test sample. I'll use something that's acidic, basic, and neutral just to cover the spectrum.
Okay.
And I'll be able to draw a nice equilibration or steady state line. I'll then take that same column and I'll put it back into its initial kind of storage conditions, 100% acetonitrile. And once it's in that initial conditions, I'll then start to do immediate sample injections and see how long it takes for those probes to make it to its steady state. And I can measure that in column volume.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
So Kim, how's that data look?
Yep, the data actually looks pretty good. We looked at 3 compounds, beryllium, tosylate, and uridine, and we basically graphed their retention time versus the number of column volumes we put through the column, and we looked for where the steady state was actually achieved to indicate fully equilibration of the column. And what we can see is that for all 3 of those compounds, it really took about 30 column volumes total under HILIC conditions to reach that steady state.
Yeah, you can obviously see that. It took a little bit of time.
Yep.
So Kim, when we take a look at this equilibration versus column volume chart for both a reverse phase and a HILIC column, you can really see that for a reverse phase column, which is shown in blue, that it doesn't take many column volumes at all to equilibrate that column, typically about 5, where the HILIC column is taking roughly 30 to 40 column volumes.
Wow, that's a significant difference.
Yeah, and I wonder if it is based strictly on volume. We're talking 40 column volumes. If we could push that amount of volume through, faster, maybe at a higher flow rate, can we equilibrate the column quicker?
I don't know. I think that's a good experiment. Let's try it.
Yeah, let's try that experiment.
And sometime later.
So Kim, that was a really cool experiment. I'm glad we did that, looking at, can we actually speed up the equilibration time? Here, what we've done is we took another column, so a different HILIC phase, and it took 140 column volumes to equilibrate this phase.
Wow, that's a lot longer.
Yeah, it's a really, and if you think about that volume, that took at 250 microliters a minute, almost an hour, or a little over an hour to fully equilibrate. So what I then had done is I took that same column and I increased the flow rate to 500 microliters a minute, still pumped through 140 column volumes, and that brought the equilibration time now down to about 30 minutes, so half the time. It's pretty cool. I then did that even one step farther, and I increased the flow rate to 1 milliminute, or 1,000 microliters a minute. It only took roughly 100 column volumes to fully equilibrate, but now the equilibration time is only 11 minutes.
So we really were able then to decrease the amount of time needed for that equilibration by increasing the flow rate.
Exactly right. We maintained column volume, but decreased the time. So again, you're able to equilibrate that column much quicker.
Awesome.
So Kim, that was a really cool myth that we kind of were able to take a look at there. I mean, HILIC is always kind of fun and exciting and challenging. But how do you want to call this one?
I think it's definitely trusted. I mean, we were able to show with a lot of really good data that it does take longer or more column volumes to equilibrate a HILIC column. And I think that's something that a lot of scientists struggle with. So I think that this data will be really helpful for a lot of people, actually.
Yeah, and I really like how we were able to provide that kind of those tips and tricks about increasing the flow rate to push those column volumes through faster.
Right.
And that speeds up the equilibration.
Absolutely.
So that was a nice little teaching tool that hopefully our customers will be able to use.
Yep, absolutely. So let's let the scientists know.
Yeah.
You want to write it up?
I will.
Awesome. If you'd like your question to be answered on a future episode, please feel free to email us at trustyourscience@waters.com.